Welcome, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. I am standing at a lectern, but I'm kind of mobile. Not quite sure why. Thank you very much for coming to this evening's candidate forum. We are going to have 5 candidates up on the stage in a moment. But I'll begin by letting you know who I am. My name is John Costin. I am the editor of the Millerton News. The Millerton News sponsored this event 2 years ago and is really honored to sponsor it again this year. We are doing this in conjunction with the League of Women Voters, and they also handled this event 2 years ago. Yolanda Jansen, who is sitting here, was here 2 years ago. This event is one that we are very honored to sponsor as a foundation event of our democracy. Local government means a lot to the Millerton News. We, in Dutchess County, Eastern Dutchess County, we make every attempt to cover every town that we can possibly manage, certainly Amenia. I think the format is going to be very simple, and Yolanda will walk you through that. The thing I want to say is just a few words about we need to be respectful and not speak out during this event. I think Yolanda will explain that as well. The questions that have been submitted to ahead of time will be asked to each candidate, so please refrain from interrupting the moderator or the candidates during these times. I guess the last thing I really need to say, because you didn't come here to hear me talk, is that we want to make sure our phones are silenced so that we don't have that kind of a problem. So without further ado, I think I will just hand this over to Yolanda, and thank you very much for coming.
Good evening. I would like to invite the candidates to come up on stage, and to make it easier, I have designated where they are going to sit. So Victoria Parodi, if I'm saying it wrong, forgive me, is going to sit here. Leo Blackman is going to sit here. You got your chair? This is yours. Vicki Doyle is going to be here. Paul Winters here. And Roseanne Ham here. Sometimes we have tables and there are name cards in front of people. Today you have to remember who they are. Okay? Vicki, you're here. Paul, excellent. I have a separate microphone for the candidates, which they will have to pass from one to the other. And each candidate gets 3 minutes to give their opening remarks. You don't have to use the full 3 minutes. You can be brief, but you're allowed to go for a full 3 minutes. Once we start with the questions, they will each have 2 minutes to answer the question. At the very end, our goal is to be out of here by 8 o'clock-ish. But if we run out of questions earlier than that, we will close, and the candidates will have 3 minutes each to give their final closing remarks. Now, to the candidates, sitting in the front row is Sheila Abraham. Will you please raise your hand? Sheila is our timekeeper. She has signs. During the 3-minute remarks, she will hold something up at 2 minutes, 1 minute, 30 seconds, and she has a stop sign. During the questions, you will get 1 minute, 30 seconds, and stop. So if you're not sure how long you've been rambling, glance at her. It's not easy to know exactly how long you're talking. I will look at the questions. If a question is very similar to another question, I'm not going to ask it. So if you know that you submitted a question and it didn't get asked, most likely it was because I thought it was very similar to another question that somebody else already asked. I will do my best to read your handwriting, and I may paraphrase a little bit in the process of presenting the questions. I may get slightly confused. I'm going to try and read a supervisor question, have the two supervisor candidates answer it, read a council person question, and have the three council people answer it, and then go back to supervisor. This way, we don't have half the audience walking out when the supervisors are done, because that's all they wanted to know about. Not that any of you would do that. I'm sure you're interested in everybody that's running for government. So we will start with the 3-minute opening remarks, and off you go, Victoria.
As Town of Amenia Supervisor since 2014, I have been honored to serve its residents. In addition to a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration from Marist College, I achieved a 30-credit Certified Town Official certification for taking 10 different town government subject courses at the Association of Town annual training conferences. During my tenure, I navigated and successfully completed many million-dollar projects. $1 million project was the closing of the old Amenia landfill. Another successful $1 million project was building the Wassaic Trail to the train so that train travelers would have safe passage to Wassaic, and so the hamlet of Wassaic could thrive. The Amenia Town Hall heating upgrade $1 million project replaced two 60-year-old steam boilers with a hot water system, saving thousands of dollars in fuel costs. The next $1 million project is building a new highway garage, made possible by my negotiations with state agencies under Public Land Law number 34, which transferred state land 5 acres to the town of Amenia.
Thank you. Would you be willing to pass your mic to your neighbor?
I wanted to first thank the League of Women Voters, the Millerton News, and Weebatuck School.
Excuse me, this particular microphone works best if you're
Here?
almost eating it.
Okay.
So the minute you move your head, the mic has to move with you in order for the audience to hear everything you say.
Okay, appreciate that. First, thanks to the League of Women Voters, the Millerton News, and Weebatuck School for making this event possible. I also want to thank Victoria for being very gracious in my 2 years on the town board. To me, I mean, and other people as well. It seems important to me that voters hear directly from the candidates, so you see us as more than a postcard or an annoying lawn sign. My name is Leo Blackman, and I'm running for supervisor. For the past 20 years, I've been an active volunteer here. I've served on the Planning Board, Zoning Board of Appeals, Housing Board, and Wastewater Committee, and I've donated my design services for various town projects. A few years ago, I retired after 35 years as an architect, specializing in preservation projects for schools, churches, and residential clients. I have a successful track record of overseeing large, complex projects with diverse constituents and tight budgets. I ran for Amenia Town Board in 2021 because of my frustration with what I perceived as their lack of urgency, vision, and transparency. I believe in bringing people together to find consensus before deciding and acting. I like to work collaboratively, gathering opinions from experts and users. But after 2 years on the board, while I have made progress on some of the issues I care about, I found that's not the way the board operates. The supervisor is critical to inviting participation and leading us as a community, but many decisions are made behind the scenes, leaving those who watch us on TV wondering why we voted for what. In no media do we do a great job of communicating with the public. We need to listen when you email or speak and respond promptly. There's much to do. We live in a beautiful rural town that has lost the liveliness it once had. Our economic base has shrunk, and new jobs tend to be at wages so low the holders of those jobs can't find a place to live. We need more homes that people can afford and more small businesses to succeed. We need more young families to support our schools and volunteer in our fire departments. That requires a long-term vision. As supervisor, I will fight for grants to upgrade and build long-promised projects like drinking water repairs and a wastewater system, which are both needed for downtown growth, a new highway garage, and better parks and programs for everyone. I will be aggressive in protecting our community and natural resources, especially from more farm-destroying luxury development. We need creative solutions and action, not obstacles. I have the skills, time, and energy to get the work done. I'm Leo Blackman, and I'm asking for your vote. First, I look forward to answering your questions.
I want to say thank you also to the League of Women Voters and to Weebatuck High School and to the Millerton News for hosting us tonight. This is a wonderful opportunity for us to speak directly to you. I haven't had much of a chance to go door to door because I am a current town board member, and this is budget season. And Victoria probably has the same, and Leo. We're all incumbents, and we're very busy this time of year. But I wanted to say that I have constantly, even before I moved here in 2001, I kind of fell in love with Amenia. I lived in Stanfordville for probably 15 years before I moved here 20-some years ago, and I was the planning board secretary. I was fascinated with, I was doing a course, a master's in public history, and was interested about public policy and how zoning and land use planning could help with town's growth and such. So I became the planning board secretary primarily just to help with my studies. But I got paid as well, and I got to learn the town from the employee's point of view, even in a small way. I really do love being a resident here. I moved to the Oblong Valley, or the Wassaic area, like I said, in 01. I became a town board member, believe it or not, in 04. So 3 years, just barely here. I decided to throw my hat in the ring because I could see so many great things. When I first came, we were working on our comp plan, and it was updating the comp plan of 91, and then we started updating it again in 2007. We passed a new update, and currently we're working on another one. So there is a flow to all of the interests that I've had in this particular town. I've been a fundraiser for nonprofits for 30 years, something like that, and I enjoy the opportunity as your town councilwoman to use the skills that I know working for nonprofits to marshal resources. You're all sitting here tonight, and you all have skills. You all have particular knowledge and interests that would help me be a better town councilwoman, help your town be a better place. And it doesn't have to necessarily cost money. You can already, I'm looking out in the audience, and I already see people who are skilled and talented, and they've already put many of their resources into your town in quiet ways that you don't necessarily see or understand, but you see the flowers in front of the post office in Wassaic, or you see somebody pulling weeds.
The remaining of your remarks can be part of your closing remarks.
So in closing, I will say there's a lot of unfinished business, such as Leo referred to, and that is building the highway garage I'd like to see come to a fruition, and I would like to see our wastewater be implemented. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Paul Witters. Thank you all for being here tonight. I'm running for the Amenia Town Board seat. There's 2 seats open. I'm running for one of them. I first lived in the Amenia area back in 1987 in Wassaic. My father was a carpenter. We came up from Carmel, and he renovated the house up on Winchell Mountain. Afterwards, we left. I went around the country, And then in 2004, I purchased Gordon Van Coor's old place out on Route 22 going out of town. In the 20 years that I've been here, my wife and I have been raising our daughters and finding different ways to give back to the community. We do a lot of different things and we enjoy it. Some of the different things that I've been involved in over the past years, for 10 years I coached the Amenia minors, the 7 to 8-year-olds, my Amenia Days of Pickers as I call them. And I've been on the wastewater committee for the past 3 years, and last year, as most of you know, I got on the recreation commission, and our recreation has been changing up this past year or so. For 20 years, just kind of give you guys a background of what I am or what I do for a living. For 20 years up there in Dutchess County, I was a custom carpenter. I've built a lot of high-end homes around here. I've renovated a tremendous amount of old homes from the 1700s and 1800s. About 10 years ago, I decided I wanted to change things up, and I became a licensed construction superintendent. And for the past 10 years, I've been managing projects from a $1 million school up to a $500 million, 44-story high-rise down on First Avenue right next to the UN building. That took us 2 years to build up. Had 300 to 400 men and women on the job site on a daily basis. So I had all these different skills. I'm really good at managing multiple different projects at one time, or herding cats, as I call it, because everybody's always got a different idea about how getting something together. I'm really good at bringing those different ideas together and getting it done in a successful way. The town faces a lot of very different challenges right now. As they spoke about before, we have a town garage that's in disrepair and it's down in a floodplain. We've been lucky enough to get a piece of land up on Route 22 to get it up, but we haven't been able to find a way. I think I could successfully find a way to get it up there, out of that floodplain. Another big problem that we have in this community is a lot of our young families seem to be deciding that this is not the place to raise their families because either one, there's no activities, or they don't see that there's any jobs in the community. That's something that we need to face head on, because otherwise we're just going to become a bedroom community. The next thing, the way to solve part of that is to use recreation and use it as an economic chance to create economic opportunity. You can do that with recreation. I've done that as a living, as my job. I've built a $20 million park down in Westchester, and shortly thereafter, all these businesses sprung up. Another great way is to finally bring wastewater into the community. We've been trying to do this for 50 years. Amenia has been trying. There's studies showing a wastewater happening 50 years ago. I'm sorry. I'll finish up the rest later.
Hi, my name is Rosanna Ham, and I want to thank you for being here and thank everybody for having this event. I am running for the town council, for the town board, and I am a retired teacher. I retired from Weebatuck in 2007. I taught here for 33 years. I graduated in this very room. I raised my family here. My father was born here. My grandfather was born here. My great-grandfather was born here. So I feel I have really deep roots, and I have a really vested interest in this community. I come from a little bit different perspective, as I'm not a politician. I have never been a politician, and I stepped up to do this because I have questions and I have concerns, and I hope there's some of the same questions and concerns that you have. My first concern and question is, why do we have our town highway department working in such deplorable conditions? And I keep hearing the town garage over and over and over again, and it's still there. And I went to visit it and was shocked. I also wonder, as being as my relatives and my grandparents and all those being farmers, and it still is kind of historically and basically an agricultural area, why there is no representation on the planning board from the agricultural perspective. And there are a lot of questions I have about the planning board. That's one of my biggest concerns. You know, the absentee rate, the meetings that are canceled due to a lack of quorum. Those are really big concerns of mine, because it's an important committee. It's an important board. It's a very important board. They're making huge decisions on the future of our country. of our town, I'm sorry. Also want to know why it's so difficult to maneuver around the website. I find it very difficult, you know, you have to find information on the website. You have to kind of dig around. I mean, it must be a simpler way. Or why we don't have a digital sign out in front of the town hall letting people know what's going on, what's happening, when meetings are, what activities are going on. I also want to know why the seniors in Amenia have to call Millerton to get rides to go to doctors' and offices and go to the store. Northeast Community Center provides that transportation. We don't have those services. We don't have an after-school program, to the best of my knowledge, and there are a lot of services for citizens that we do not have. Thank you.
All right. Microphone can stop with you. And the first question for the two supervisors will be, how will you give transparency to the issues of Silo Ridge tax bases, such as the cost of lawsuits and the allocation of the additional funds Amenia has received over the past 4 years?
That's a good question, and I've been unsuccessful in trying to get an answer to that in the time that I've been on the board, or something specific from the staff. Sorry
Please
about
just
that.
speak to the audience.
Okay, speak to the audience. I find it very frustrating because we don't know how much Silo has cost us in terms of legal fees defending the town against the 264, I think, individual suits by homeowners at Silo Ridge looking for a reduction in their taxes. I've actually looked at the individual lawsuits, and each of the owners is looking for a 90% reduction in the assessment of their houses, which I find immoral and kind of horrifying. They're only able to do that because they have a lot of money and fancy lawyers. But in Amenia, there are lots of people who have a much bigger claim to a tax break. There are lots of people living in houses they can barely maintain. I volunteer at the food pantry, and there are an enormous number of people, I think there are now 50 people, that come every Friday to get food to feed their families. So I have a lot of issues with Silo Ridge. I also think it's important that we communicate with them, which we haven't been doing very much of. And I'd like to try to have some kind of understanding with them to end the lawsuits.
Victoria, you want to?
Could you repeat the question?
I will repeat the question. How will you give transparency to the issues of Silo Ridge tax bases, such as the cost of lawsuits and the allocation of the additional funds Amenia has received over the past 4 years?
As far as the cost of the lawsuits, all anyone has to do is FOIL for the records, and they will be available to them. As far as the individual lawsuits, they are pending litigation, so we can't discuss the details of the lawsuits in open meeting. We are having our tax cert attorney, who's going to be coming to an executive session at our next meeting to go over all the lawsuits with the town board. We're limited as to how much information we can give out since we're in litigation, but we certainly can let anyone know who wants to know how much we've spent thus far, including town board members who actually sign the payment vouchers and are aware of the amounts that are being spent every month.
Thank you. If you could pass the mic to Paul Winters. Paul, you're first in tackling the following question. After you will be Rosanna, and then it goes back to Vicky. Okay? The question is, the town currently is opted out for a cannabis dispensary. Will you, if elected, support opting back in? the small micro license will allow private sales?
All right, I appreciate that question. Back in the 90s, I agitated down in Washington, D.C. to legalize commercial hemp because I felt that that was a great way to help our farmers here in Dutchess County who were struggling keeping their farms. This country has a long history with marijuana and hemp, and this thing that wants to get against it in the 20s, I think it's been wrong. Currently, we have a tremendous amount of our population that is addicted to opioids or heroin and stuff, and marijuana, you don't seem to get addicted to it. As far as a dispensary in Amenia, 2 years ago I came before the town board and asked them to vote in favor to allow that licensing so we could have that, because we have a large population that drives from here up to Great Barrington that's purchasing marijuana, whether it be in a pill form or a gummy or whatever, because they have arthritis or they have cancer. Just doesn't make sense. I mean, it's here, people. If you can either have it out in the open and people can go and purchase it and the town can benefit in tax-wise, or you can keep telling our elderly or young people that have anxiety that are using marijuana rather than using some other Oxycontin or something to deal with their anxiety. Yeah. Every day I would choose marijuana. And yes, if it got brought back up, and if I'm on the town board, I would definitely vote in favor of it.
We agree, Paul. So I will say that I have family members who use medical marijuana very effectively, and some of them have to drive to Great Barrington, or I think they can order it from Canada or someplace. But I think that really it is not. I think there's a lot of uses for it. I think that the whole idea of it being it's no worse than any of the other medications. I don't see it as being any worse than alcohol. So I don't have a problem with it, and I would definitely vote in favor of having a dispensary.
Well, this was a very hard conversation that we had at the town board level. Was it last year, Victoria? 2 years ago, and we were offered the opportunity to do a dispensary and or lounge. So we opted out of both. At the time, the town board voted, and we heard very compelling arguments on both sides of this issue. And I sided and voted no on both the dispensary and the lounge because I heard very compelling arguments from some of our residents who had family members who had tragic stories to tell in the Smithfield Valley, and I heard compelling information from our then town board member Jim Morris. And I also heard compelling arguments from our residents who said that they were having to travel to Great Barrington. So I heard both sides of a very important issue, and it's a very fair question, but I am going to have to say is that if I had to vote right now, my sense would be to vote no. I believe that it is very difficult to find out whether or not somebody is driving under the influence, and with alcohol it may be also difficult, but it's particularly difficult to do that. And I understand from people who work with a lot of people in cars that cars will park and they will have a ton of marijuana in the car and they're driving. So I don't, we have an open container law, we have bars, but I think this marijuana thing is one thing that is a harder thing to keep our citizens safe. I hope there are other opportunities. I understand Millerton has opted in, so that is an option. Maybe they don't have to travel so far, but I would personally think that it would be better for our citizens and residents at this time to opt out.
Okay, the mic back to Victoria. And the next town supervisor question is, do you have a plan to collect e-waste, batteries, etc.?
Does the town have a plan to collect e-waste batteries? Not at this time. Usually, the Dutchess County has a special hazardous waste event where that can be done, but it doesn't mean we can't look into that as a town-wide project so that we can offer that service.
Thank you. Please pass the mic to Leo so he can answer the same question.
Well, since I have some e-waste sitting in my garage and don't know what to do with it, I would be very happy if Amenia actually had the wherewithal to recycle that. I don't think it would be very hard to set up, and I would definitely want to get going on that if I win.
The mic now goes to Roseanne.
Could you repeat the question?
The next question, new question, you get special blue questions. They get yellow questions. Sorry. How will you, gotta take my glasses off. How will you ensure Amenia will accommodate homes for working class folks that they can afford? And that's to all three council members or people running for the board.
Well, I'm going to be perfectly honest. I don't know. I know that there is a need for it. I know that there are things in the work. As a matter of fact, there's a planning board meeting tonight, and they're doing some preliminary discussion about that very topic. How I can ensure that that's going to happen, I can't answer that honestly.
It's my understanding that about 15, 20 years ago, our zoning laws changed in this town, and we increased the amount of acreage that you needed in order to purchase a home or to build a home. A quick way to resolve that problem is to revisit the zoning laws and create districts where you don't have to have 4 or 5 acres to build a home. Create a district that only has a half an acre, then you can build a home that's a lot cheaper than having to build a $400,000 or $500,000 home. You could build a home for $200,000. You could build a home with a garage next door to it and have an apartment upstairs, and then the working class could work there. There's multiple ways that you could address this, but the biggest issue that we face right now is we're zoned as a bedroom community. And if we keep that zoning like that, we are going to become a bedroom community, and you're not going to have the people that volunteer at the fire department. You're not going to have the people that volunteer to coach your kids for baseball and stuff, because they're going to have to get up like me and go to work down in New York City every day to pay their bills. So our biggest problem probably is zoning.
I would heartily disagree in that I think the key to unlocking affordable housing in Amenia is the wastewater treatment facility. We do have the zoning. We have, if you read the comprehensive plan, it screams from page 1 to page 100 to implement and to get and achieve the goals that we set out as a town, to provide affordable housing, to preserve our open space and farmland, to have economic revitalization. You need a wastewater treatment plant in the downtown so that you can have apartments and such. I don't know that necessarily all of us want or need even half acre of land. We need a place to live, shelter, people in their entry-level jobs need just a 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom studio, modest, to get their feet on the ground. They don't need to buy a lawnmower, they don't need to buy all the things and get a plumber in, all of those things, redo the roof when the roof leaks. We need affordable housing, and you can only do it if you have the density in the town centers where people can walk to their services, they could walk to the library, they could enjoy the basketball games without a car, without 3 cars in the garage. That's affordable housing, and that's something that we desperately need, is that lower tier, entry-level housing for both at either end of the age groups, from our seniors who don't need a house, they need to push mow or clear the snow or whatever they need, affordable apartments and condos and such where things are easier living and minimize our footprint. We don't all need lawnmowers and tractors and things that a big house would do. So wastewater will open up those possibilities. Thank you.
Okay, Leo, you keep the phone, and apropos the most recent question, it's worded as if this question is just to you, but I will ask both you and Victoria to answer it. In a sense, they're asking which has a priority, the highway garage or the sewer system. They're saying they hear you talk about the sewer system, but what about the highway garage? And other people are saying, you're talking about the highway garage, but what about the sewer system? I think they're trying to understand which one is more important and will be a priority.
I have also visited the highway garage, and it was 2 years ago. I was skinnier then, and I could barely fit between the trucks when they were parked. So the walls are eaten out by salt at the bottom. There's there's not heat. There's not a break room. There's kind of nothing inside. It's like many other things in Amenia. It shouldn't have been built the way it was ever, but it was. And the other thing is that it's in a floodplain, and so there are huge piles of salt right at the edge of the Wasaic Creek. All of those things need to be fixed, but I think that wastewater opens up a lot of possibilities that are kind of bigger. I think that, again, I found a report when I was chair of the wastewater committee that was from 1962 that said that Amenia was going to shrivel up and die unless it got a wastewater system. Well, it's like 60-some years later now, and we still don't have one. I think that's really unfortunate. That's a lot of boards that have come and gone, and a lot of attempts that have been made. And what's different now is that there's an enormous amount of money, both the federal infrastructure money and also money from the county and the state, because they recognize that rural communities need wastewater. And I think we just have to tap that. I think we can tap multiple sources at the same time. There's just a lot of grant money right now, and we just have to be more aggressive in pursuing it. Again, I don't want to minimize the need for the highway garage. I don't want to minimize the need for repairing our water system, which again was horribly built, stupidly built, and has been corroding for a very long time without board intervention. Things don't get maintained, and so there are many things in Amenia that need fixing, and that we need to sort of get going on those simultaneously. Victoria.
I unequivocally feel that the highway garage is the top priority. The building that the highway department employees is unsafe, and they need to be in a safe building. We have experienced highway garage engineers, Labella, who have come up with a concept plan, which is being finalized. And as soon as we find the funding and get the funding in place, there's no reason why we can't start construction next year. But besides the fact that the highway garage is in a floodplain and the salt shed is too near a stream, those are two more reasons why we need to move it. And we need to move it now, since we have spent all the money doing RFPs, getting experienced engineers to do all the work and get a safe highway garage in the land that has been transferred from the state.
Thank you. Please pass the mic to Vicky. The next question for the council people candidates is, oh, where did I put my blue one? I moved it. I'll start with this one. Can you make information more accessible? It needs to be simple and understandable.
love that question because I feel that that is the one thing that has been frustrating, in that I don't think some of the most important information that we have, the most important decisions that we're making at the town hall are necessarily understood by the normal resident here. So how to do that is the $64,000 question. And I think one thing that we need to focus on is making sure that people understand the fiscal impact. You're hearing about these big ticket items over and over again. The water district needs, big repairs. You're hearing the wastewater needs to be, we have to rip up all of the streets and lay all this expensive infrastructure. And you're hearing that the highway garage needs to be redone, and that the town hall is wonderful, but it needs some big, we need to continue improving that as well, and we have big recreational plans as well. So how is that going to impact you? Are you going to be able to afford to live here? And I understand that because a third of my mortgage is my taxes. So I wonder if I'm going to, what that's going to do to my escrow account. We still have a mortgage. So that's a concern for me. And one thing that Victoria did bring in to us was an opportunity to have a fiscal analysis and an understanding of how the water district alone, all that infrastructure, a company would come in, put in a lot of data into our database, say, here's what the user fees are now, here's what you need to do to take care of and maintain going forward, and here's all your improvements, and here's what you're going to have to borrow, and then over the next 30 years, this is what your cost is going to be on your 300 people in that district. I want to do the same thing for our overall town budget. We need to understand how these big ticket items are going to dovetail with our existing tax base.
The original question was on how to get the information out in the community, is that correct?
Why can't the decision-making process for various, no, that was, excuse me, the person who asked this question, I was told that everybody's only allowed to ask one question, so I put the second question away. Can you make information more accessible? It needs to be simple and understandable.
So last year when I got on the Recreation Commission, the first thing I said is nobody in town knows what's going on. So I said, let's go back old school. Let's print up a little card and mail it to everybody's home. So everybody should have got a card at least 3 times this year, listing out the things that we did on recreation this year. We can keep building off of that. Not everybody goes on social media. Not everybody watches Channel 22. Everybody gets mail. Sounds really stupid, right? It's just a piece of paper, but it's real simple. It only costs us $5,000 to get those little letters out to all you guys. If the town came up with a flyer, put it on there every 2-3 months, and sent all the information out to the town, it's real simple, straightforward. It doesn't need to be complicated. I do want to answer back to this question that was asked to the supervisors about which project should be first. There's no reason that we should not be able to do more than one project at a time. Your grant funding sources for both projects come from a different location. So in my world, we do 10 or 15 things on a single day. There's no reason that we can't build a highway garage, that we can't do the wastewater, and that we can't improve recreation all simultaneously. There's nothing stopping us from doing it. You just have to put the effort in.
Communication is huge. It's a huge thing for me. I think that we need to simplify. I alluded to the website. I think we need to simplify the website, make it more accessible. I think we need to develop email lists. There's no reason we can't have all of your email lists, and when something is important going on, that we send it to you. But get it in multiple ways. Public hearings, the digital sign, televising planning board meetings and zoning board meetings and some of those other meetings, and not just town board meetings, so that people can access that information easily. I think that I think transparency and communication is really important, and I think we need to reach out to everybody and have everybody become involved, because it is your community. And I think it's important that you're involved and that you have input, and I think that's an extremely great question.
The mic needs to come back to Victoria. And the next yellow question is, would you agree to term limits? And if so, would you vote for them before the election?
Depends what the term limits are.
Well, this questioner has not gone into that level of detail, so please use your imagination.
Well, I haven't thought about term limits since I'm running for my 6th term, but if the voters think there should be term limits, then I'm not against it. It's whatever the voters want, whatever they feel comfortable with. But as far as voting for term limits, yes, I would.
Leo, what is your answer?
I don't think it makes sense to vote before the election on term limits, since two of the bread on both sides of this sandwich have both been in town hall for a long time and are already running. So I think if the term limits impact those races, it wouldn't make sense. I also think that's something that the public needs to get involved in and be able to hear what they say at meetings, and there's not enough time to do that.
I have a blue card question on the same question, so we'll let Paul be the first one to answer. And
as some of you may know, some of you follow me on Facebook, I proposed earlier this week that the town start discussing term limits. I'm fully in favor of that. We do have one member, town board member, that has been here for 20 years. That member has served those 20 years because she loves this town. But I just think it's too long, personally. I also disagree with having the supervisor up for re-election every 2 years. They're up there doing their job for 1 year, and they're up there for 1 year running for re-election. That makes no sense to me at all. They should be there up there for 4 years, just like everybody else. I think that either 8 or 12 years at the town board level and then 8 years at the supervisor level is more than enough. And then new people need to step up. I mean, the community has to be willing to step up. But if someone keeps running, there's no incentive for anyone else to step up.
Roseanne?
As far as term limits are concerned, I really, there's a lot of things that go into that. If somebody's really doing a good job and they're willing to do that, people can step up anytime they want. I mean, I stepped up, and I never would have thought I would. I was asked, and I said yes. Sometimes I wondered why, but I do have to say that I think it depends on whether a person is doing a good job or not. And I think there's plenty of opportunities for people to step up and run for office. So I'm not sure that time in and of itself is really a determinant on whether somebody should run or not. I just don't believe that. I do think that, people do need to step up, though. People need to step up. People need to step up and serve on these committees and on these commissions and on these boards. People need to step up and try to fill the planning board. We have somebody on the planning board that's been there for like 30 years. And so I think that term limits, I'm not really convinced that in this town it's really that important. I think if somebody wants to run, they can run, and the voters then choose.
Vicki?
I would agree with that last statement, is that I don't think that, I believe in the voters. I think that you guys can go to the polls and say to yourself, oh, she's been on for 20 years and she's been on for 1 year and this is a new person. I think you can go to the poll and say, is that the most important factor in making a decision? I would kind of, just in my own world of when we hire people, I would imagine that somebody would just decide to predetermine that anybody with 20, let's say 8, wherever the threshold is. Let's say you say 8 years is enough as supervisor. You arbitrarily just throw out half of your applicants because they have more than 8 years of experience. It would be insanity. You would want to look at other factors rather than just that one thing. And guilty as charged. I've been there for 20 years. You should make a decision about whether or not I've done a good job or not, and whether or not, you know, I'm a known commodity, and you're voting for somebody for the town board for 4 years. 4 years. So you want to really make sure that you're making a good decision. And it would be kind of sad, I guess, to say that just because somebody had done their 2 terms or 3 terms, whatever you set the bar at, they're no longer available. And I would also say that moving up to supervisor is not something I would suggest unless you are retired. This is a big job. We're talking about big projects. We're talking about not a part-time job. I've been very happy being deputy supervisor for many, many years because I have a full-time job. I am not available to do all of the work that needs to be done to keep the staff going, to keep the finances going, and to make these projects happen. So I would say no to term limits at this moment.
The next person, yeah, you hold on to it, Leo. This question is similar to an earlier one, but it has a few additional components. So just go for the bits that are different. About communication, how will you improve the pathways of communication? So we did that. But there's 3 categories here. From the board to the Amenia citizens. I heard postcards and letters and emails. From concerned citizens to the board, that's in the other direction. From commuters to the board. So I think we're talking people who, like Paul, are here, they live here but have to work far away and may have different issues, right, from the people who are able to live here. So I think
Repeat those 3 parts.
from the board to the Amenia citizens,
Okay.
from concerned citizens to the board, and from commuters to the board.
Okay. From the board to citizens seems to me the largest of those questions. I have heard an enormous amount of complaining that people who live in town don't feel like they know what's going on. The town board meetings are televised, but there's very little discussion, actually, it seems to me, that happens in the town board meetings. We vote on resolutions that come to us the day before. There's not a real process of working collaboratively, and I think that's really unfortunate because if people could see on the board what those conversations were about, see on TV what those conversations were about, I think they'd feel a lot better about how the sausage gets made. I think there's also a lot that can be done in terms of responding to questions from citizens. I've raised this a number of times in the 2 years I've been on the board. There's no protocol for responding to emails or questions. They sometimes do, they sometimes don't. It's usually not right away. They sometimes get passed on to the lawyer or the head of the highway department, but it seems like the board and the supervisors should really handle that and should be responsive in a way that it just isn't at the moment. In terms of how people communicate with the board, 30 seconds. In terms of people communicating with the board, again, I think they need to know that that what they send into the board will be heard, and that they'll be taken seriously, and that they won't be told to sit down at public hearings. We need to really change the way that we exchange information with the citizens and the citizens to us.
Victoria?
Okay, one was people communicate with the board, and what were the other?
I'll give you the 3 categories. From the board to Amenia citizens, from concerned citizens back to the board, and from commuters to the board.
And then also commuters?
Yes.
Actually, I am available pretty much 24/7 to any of my constituents and have been that way. You can contact me by text, email, or if you're in the town hall, my car's out in front, you can come into my office. I have an open door policy. As far as commuters, I'm not really sure how they, unless, are they in the city or at a job site or somewhere else? I mean, I am available. From the board to the Amenia citizen, that kind of bothers me. I think it's important that you know how and we are conducting your business and how we're spending your taxpayer dollars. On our website, which needs work, and I will take that back with me. We do have resolutions, minutes, and our budgets, reorganization meeting. There is a lot of information on there. I invite you to take a good look at the information available to you. And if you feel, there should be something else there, I really would like to know.
Let me just, commuters might mean what is the availability on the weekend, because they would often not be able to attend things during the week because of commuting.
Well, it depends what the commuters are interested in getting information about. As I said, I'm available 24/7. If you're only here on a Saturday or Sunday, please make an appointment with me. I'm available any day, anytime.
Thank you for that clarification. The next person to be first to answer the councilperson question is Paul. What will you do to ensure that Amenia takes advantage of the federal and state funds made available for rural infrastructure improvements?
So all you have to do is just get your grant writer to write the grants, right? And you have to put the applications in. I'm working with the recreation. We're trying to apply for these grants. At the wastewater committee, we're trying to apply for these grants. The biggest problem to be able to take advantage of a lot of these grants there are studies that have to be done, or documents that have to be created, or engineering that has to be created, and those services are not cheap. It could be from $50,000 to $150,000, and the town is not in a position, the way I currently tax, to be able to quickly move on those things. It takes a couple years to get that money together. So it's not easy with the way our town is currently set up and operates to be able to apply for these grants to come out. And you have deadlines that you have to meet. And if you can't meet that deadline, then you got to wait until the following year, and then there's less money in the pie. I'm not real sure if there is an easy solution to say, yes, we can get all of this money that's available to us currently from the infrastructure, and what was it you spoke of before at the wastewater we were working for. I think it's only available for 2 years, if I'm correct, and that time is running out. And unfortunately, small town government works super slow. I've been here for almost 2 years in the rec commission, and I'll tell you right now, it works super slow. I don't know how we make it faster. I'm trying to, but it's not easy.
Rosanna?
Honestly, I think it's hard to ensure that you can do anything. That word ensure, I'm not sure that it can be ensured. But I think that having a grant writer and applying for grants is all that we can do. There's not even an assurance that the grant money is always going to be there. I mean, it could be gone tomorrow. It's hard to tell. So I think that we need to do the best that we can, but I don't know that we can actually ensure it.
I agree that we need to move quickly and we need to be organized, and they're looking for shovel-ready projects. No grant funding agency that I know of really wants to pay for the engineering to study to see whether or not it's feasible or not, and whether your community can pay for it. There is upfront costs that the town needs to take seriously and budget accordingly. This is budget season, I mentioned it before. Right now, in this month of October, before we pass this in November, we have to make some hard decisions about what we're going to go ahead and front. And maybe we don't spend the $5,000 sending out a postcard about the recreation. Maybe we put that on our website and we put it on social media, and we find other ways. We put the $5,000 towards doing the engineering studies that are needed to get us in the position of being shovel ready. We do have to pay for legal work, we need to pay for engineering studies, and those lines need to be beefed up accordingly. We kicked the can down the road last budget season. I was one board member, I only have one vote. You need more aggressive people on your town board who are willing to make some hard choices and sacrifices in other lines and put in the number that you need to get the jobs done. Our wastewater committee is working very, very hard. Other committees are working very hard, and when we don't budget according to what they need to make the next step forward, what are we telling them? Thanks, but you know, we're not going to give you what you need to make the next obvious step. We put $20,000 instead of the $87,000 that we needed to do the next step for wastewater. Let's get it done. We have 1 month. Put the pressure right now on your town board members and on the election booth and say, let's get this stuff done. Millerton is doing it. We can do it too.
Thank you. Leo, I think the mic is yours again. Am I losing track? Not that it makes a big difference. I'm not 100% sure if I have this number correct. Please discuss the either 48,000 or 481,000. It's a big difference because by a factor of 10. No bid contract. The supervisor tried awarding to SEBI Environmental Services.
Well, I know what that's about. We've had a wastewater consultant, the person who runs our wastewater system, who almost everyone in the wastewater, in the water district seems to have a problem with. I had actually suggested when we did an engineering study for improvements to the water district that we bid that out, that we get other engineers to sort of check on what our engineer had been doing, and that didn't happen. I mean, the supervisor feels very comfortable with Marco. I think that we need to be very careful about choosing consultants. We need to be willing to change them when they're not doing the job we need. And I think that we need to be consistent about how we assign contracts and how we choose vendors. That's not always the case, and it's actually very frustrating that certain projects end up with people that are, possibly less than ideal because we don't kind of look far enough, or we don't consider people beyond our circle.
Victoria?
Actually, I believe we're talking about the lead and copper inventory project that we have. There wasn't a $481,000 contract given to CBI to do the project because SCBI and I had applied for a grant, which is $481,000, and that I'm currently working with EFC and the Department of Health, who sponsored this grant, to follow all the criteria they have. And if one of the criteria means going out to bid for the $481,000, then that's what we will do in order to take advantage of this money that the water district has been awarded. One of the things we have in Amenia, we've passed a resolution several years ago that we didn't necessarily have to take the lowest bid, that we could actually look at best value. Before we give a contract to people, references are checked, and we just try to do the very best to get the very best people to do the job.
Thank you. Please pass the mic to Paul. Blue card question. I understand Silo Ridge is seeking permission to build more luxury housing on Depot Hill. Would you support this?
I'm really conflicted about this. I'm a builder, but also I'm aware that high-end houses reduces our school taxes, state and refund from the school that we get, because every time the overall town income goes up, the less school money we get. If it's zoned for that, I can't really say much, but there needs to be a balance between what they would build up there on Depot Hill and what the town can afford. Maybe there's a lieu in place of taxes to offset what we would lose in school funding from all these homes being built here. I would really like to see...
Excuse the interruption. Good evening, everyone. Just wanted to make a quick announcement. We are going to be wrapping up the evening at 7:30, which is in about 12 minutes. So please feel free to continue to interact and walk around. And thank you so much for coming. It's been a great evening, and wish you all a safe trip home. Thank you.
Which has nothing to do with us. Okay?
If we were to approve, the town was to approve moving forward with the Depot Hill, I would hope that the town would get something back from them, say 15 acres of 15 inexpensively built homes that could be used for young people as starter homes that would be there for, like, say 5 years, and then they go out and they purchase a bigger home for their families. I think that's a great idea to help our community, is if we had a place where young people could start out building their credit, kind of like a condo almost. It doesn't need to be a big piece of land. It could be a quarter acre. It could be a small two-bedroom home. Maybe that's something we could ask in turn.
Keeping Amenia rural is very important to me. I am not in favor of building more huge high-end houses, especially when you look at the view coming down from Delaverne Hill. We've already lost some of that view and majesty. That part of that really makes Amenia is that view, and that really concerns me. And the whole idea of, and with all the lawsuits and things that we've had with Silo Ridge, we have that again. I just really have so many concerns on so many levels about building any more communities, gated communities, high-end houses. I really would be against it.
Vicki?
I apologize. This is not something I've followed carefully. I've certainly heard about it, and I understand that there was a conservation analysis done as a part of the requirement when you do a large subdivision of that size. So I know that they were required to do a conservation analysis. I'm pretty sure about that, and I think that the planning board sounds like they are siding with the developers who want to do these big, usual 10-acre sites and try to work around the agricultural requirement. They have 10 acres or more to get a agricultural assessment. So I would hope that the planning board would do their homework well. They would go towards the conservation easements and say that you can get density bonuses, which would make conservation of the open space possible, and it would concentrate the houses in an area that would be appropriate for development and out of the view shed for coming down Delaverne Hill. Our comprehensive plan and zoning was designed with this kind of idea in place. We have land that we want to save and maintain that rural character, and we added the opportunity for developers to get additional homes if they would tuck them into areas that were not in the view shed, not impacting some of the other overlays that we have, the aquifer or whatever. We encourage them to cite their plans early in areas that would impact the community and keep the important parts of our community the way we want it to be and still allow for development. That would be my recommendation. I would also put a plug in for the Conservation Advisory Council, of which I've been a liaison. They are the ones who look carefully at these development plans and would put in a recommendation. So I would follow their lead. They are deeper and closer to that subject.
Victoria, the next question. Do you support the construction of affordable multi-family housing in Amenia?
I do. I know of the great need from talking to the business owners that they need affordable rents for their workforce. And I think if the area is an appropriate area with our zoning, that we should do whatever we can to provide that for the staff of our businesses, so they have an affordable place to stay here, and to for economic development for the town of Amenia.
Paul? Leo? Sorry. Same question.
Okay, same question.
Do you support the construction of affordable multi-family housing in Amenia?
I do. I was chair of the affordable housing committee before I became a town board member. I believe in that absolutely. The fact that people who work at Troutbeck or Silo or Four Brothers even are not earning enough money to be able to live anywhere in the town of Amenia is a big problem. I mean, that's a problem that's worsened by COVID and people moving up here and buying houses sight unseen, but it was a problem before then, and it will continue to be a problem unless we really take a large bite of this problem, because we haven't yet. That's one of the reasons that I find the development at Keenstud, again, sort of mortifying, because we don't need housing for multimillionaires. We have plenty. Silo Ridge is less than half built at this point. What we do need desperately is housing that working people can afford. And if that disappears at the rate it's been disappearing, it totally changes the character of the town. That's why we don't have enough people volunteering for the fire departments. The economic disparity leads to a loss of community. The people that actually live at Silo Ridge rarely go outside the gates. They don't spend money in town. They don't get to meet any people in town. I do see one example of a Silo resident who's broken through, which I appreciate. But in general, I think that we have to think about housing for middle-class people and working-class people first, and not just let the developers dictate what we get, because we can't support more of what we're getting. And in addition to that, the plans for Keenstud are horrific. They're building mega mansions, or they want to build mega mansions on 10-acre lots, which means that everything that's farmland now would be cut into very large suburban development.
All right, the microphone goes to Rosanna. who gets the pleasure of answering this question. It's a little bit of venting. I'm not sure whether you can answer this. How do you propose to make all homes affordable? My assessment went up $50,000 this year, and taxes went up accordingly, with no improvements made to my home.
Wow. So that is an excellent question. And I keep being told that I'm not right, that I'm incorrect. But when you look at, historically, you look at Long Island, you look at Westchester County, you look at Putnam County, when you start getting all of those huge houses, when you start getting, people moving in that have lots of money, everything goes up, and people get moved out. And I don't know, and that's why I think the planning board is so important. I think it's important that the planning board be aware of these kinds of things. There's no good, having affordable housing, if the taxes go up, it's no longer affordable. So I obviously, as a retired teacher on a pension, it's a very big concern of mine. And I don't know exactly the answer other than to stop some of this development that's going on, because we're going to be just like Westchester County. People have to move out. They can't afford it. Putnam County, we're next. I guess you have to keep moving north. But it's a huge concern, and I wish I had an answer, but I think the planning board plays a large part in that, and I think we have to really be careful and watch the planning board. I think we need to keep them accountable, and I think that we need to participate, go to the meetings, and I think that's the only way we're going to do it.
Vicki, you're next.
Well, it sounds extraordinary to me if it really did go up $50,000, or sorry, the assessed value went up $50,000. Is that correct?
Yes, not his taxes.
And what does his taxes go up?
He didn't say, but he said accordingly.
Okay. So what happens with a town-wide reassessment, and we have had several, as you know, maybe from your own neighborhood, houses are selling for a lot more money. I'm shocked, I'm sure you are too, at the prices that are coming in. Leo said that people are buying them sight unseen. Yes, my neighbor to one side came from Texas, had never seen it, and they paid $400,000 for a house that was really just $200,000 for all the years I've been living there. So yes, it's shocking, and we did a reassessment, a town-wide reassessment, but your taxes should not have gone up dramatically. It is shared. It's like a big pie. So everybody else's also went up accordingly based on the historical sales marketing analysis that our assessor has done. If you have a question about that, you should come into the assessor's office. Donna DePetco is a professional assessor. She's very good. She's available on Saturday mornings. You can make an appointment with her. Even if you're a commuter, you can get an appointment with her. She's very capable of explaining how she came up with that number and what impact it has on your taxes, and how you formally grieve at no cost to you. You don't have to have a fancy lawyer. In May, there's a grievance day and a board of assessment review. Our board of assessment review are citizens like yourselves who are going to hear your problem, your concerns, and they will help make the decision and represent you to our assessor. So I think there are a lot of opportunities for you to find out more about your assessed value and how that impacts your ability to afford your house.
Paul gets a chance to answer that same question.
Yeah, so this is just an assessment question, and Vicki answered the question. The only way that you can change your assessment is on grievance day. This has really nothing to do with the town board or anybody else. There's no special magical bullet that you can change what your assessment is. You have to go in and you have to do your due diligence, find out what your comparable properties are next to you, and file a grievance. And they'll work with you. $50,000 increase in your value of your home does not equal large, huge $50,000 tax increase. It's probably, like 1 or 2% of whatever that 50,000 is. But you just do your due diligence and you go in and you have grievance day.
Thank you. Leo, hold the mic. Good. We've been here before, but this is a slightly different way of asking the same question. If you had to choose between the wastewater system and the drinking water system, and you can only improve one, how would you prioritize and decide?
Well, again, I'm a big believer in the need for the wastewater system because I feel that Amenia is sort of trapped in amber because there's no possibility of making a denser downtown. A denser downtown would preserve farmland because instead of ripping up farmland for big houses on big lots, we would have affordable apartments in the downtown. We would have more foot traffic to support local businesses. So I'm a big fan of the wastewater system because we haven't been able to do it, and we're really falling behind. You can see even Millerton is several years ahead of us on this. In terms of the water system, I think that the water system, it's sort of shocking the condition it's in, and that didn't happen last year. I mean, that's been happening for a decade or more. And so the fact that the board hasn't addressed it until now is kind of shocking to me. It definitely needs work. The distribution piping is a mess as installed. The water tower is rusting. The pump house and the wells on Lavelle Road are no longer, or just barely functional at this point. But it's a big, big project. Not quite as big as wastewater, but a very large project. It's essential for people who are in the district. But I also kind of resent the fact that it has not been addressed in all this time. And that we have the same water operator all this time who also has not, as far as I know, I've only been there 2 years, but I don't think has informed, has not alerted the town board to the situation and has not started on a remedy much sooner.
Victoria? Water or sewer?
First, I would like to point out that the quality of the drinking water is very high, that we haven't had problems with PFOAs and other chemicals in our water. So we're very fortunate in that. Where we're unfortunate is the state of infrastructure, which is why we're looking for land to replace wells that are in danger of getting surface water in them. And this isn't a problem that you're going to take care of overnight. You need to find the land, you need to drill extra wells, you need to decommission wells. It's a whole project. And we have several reports of engineering. We also have an inventory report. We have a capital project plan. But we need to, one of the things we need to do is to move forward. And so the water district, I believe, has the greatest need, but that doesn't mean that we cannot do wastewater at the same time because it's a completely different type of funding that you would need for wastewater because you're actually building a sewer district.
All right, the microphone goes to Vicki. Vicki, should Troutbeck be able to expand on historic land?
This has been a very burning question for a lot of people in particularly the Wassaic Oblong Valley, close to where I live. The place for delving deeper into these kind of analysis, the planning and the land use issues, has been the Conservation Advisory Council. Again, as a liaison, I did a site visit. I looked at Troutbeck's adaptive reuse plan. We looked at where there are natural hedgerows, screening what would be the new hotel conference area. We looked at how they're handling invasive plants, and we looked at the place where they were going to site their cabins. We talked to the owner about all kinds of ways that they were going to try and make that a more sustainable business model for their business. And the CAC weighed in. They gave a report to the planning board. Whether the planning board respects their opinions or not, at least it's there on record. I would support the CAC's position that yes, they are, it appears to fit with the adaptive reuse plan, that they're using the land carefully and thoughtfully and following best practices. So on the whole, there were suggestions that we make sure that the pond that they intend to create, that they don't disturb unnecessarily the natural features, and that they screen everything from the residents who are around there. But I guess if I needed to make a decision, of which I don't make a decision as a town board member, I simply facilitate the others on the planning board. I don't really have a role in making a decision, but I would be in favor of the economic development as it is. Thank you.
Paul.
All right, so this is a great question for me because, as we all discussed before, I'm a construction superintendent who is employed by AP Construction of Stamford, Connecticut. AP Construction signed the construction management contract with Troutbeck in August, after I had already filed to be running for town board. My company assigned me to be the construction superintendent for the Troutbeck project as it goes forward over the next 3 years. I announced to the public before I put my signs up that this was going to be my job on a daily basis for the next 3 years. I wanted the community to be fully aware that I'll be involved at Troutbeck. But what I would do if I was elected on my first day is I would write a letter to the ethics committee and ask them if I need to recuse myself for any decisions concerning Troutbeck. I've already taken my own steps within my company because as a construction superintendent, I'm usually responsible for interacting with the building inspector. My company has assigned someone else to interact with that building inspector because I didn't feel that it would be correct for Mike and I to be having to work together. It wouldn't look proper to the town in my eyes. So that would be my first step, is I would ask the ethics committee to make a decision of whether I need to recuse myself for anything concerning Troutbeck. Currently, I don't think that I would need to because, as everybody has discussed, it's the planning board and zoning board that makes most of the decisions concerning anything with those types of things.
Rosanna?
Here's another one, another concern of mine. It was my understanding that reuse meant taking an existing thing and making it something else. Prime example being the Wasake project. There was an old mill there, it was standing there, they reused it, they made it into something that's usable. Troutbeck is talking about major growth. And I know that many of the people that live in Leedsville, the surrounding areas, I know that the farming areas down there, the people are really concerned about that. The other concern I have is people don't always keep their promises. One of the things that was mentioned, and I followed that whole planning board meetings pretty closely, was they would not use pesticides. Well, they did use pesticides. They did it for the spongy moss. Now, I know spongy moss are a problem, but there are a lot of ways of doing that naturally without using pesticides. So, it's one thing for the planning board to set forth a plan, and it's another thing to make sure that somebody enforces that plan and makes sure that they follow that plan. And I have some real serious concerns about that.
The microphone goes to Victoria. And your next question is, if you win, what can you do different for town for the teens and families to stay in the town?
Well, if I win, I would support all the good work that our Recreation Commission is doing and providing more things for the families and the children to do, both individually and together. I mean, the concerts they did were absolutely wonderful. There were families of all ages came in and sat down, listened to music, enjoyed some of the food that was offered. And I think we need to do more events like this for families and children so that they feel like, there's something here in this town and there's something special. And I would wholeheartedly support the Recreation Commission's work in this field.
Thank you. Leo?
I too am grateful to Paul for making the Recreation Committee stretch. Vicki Doyle and I were very insistent that there be a full-time recreation director hired. We had talked about that 2 years ago, and we got that in the last budget. And the recreation director, Katie, was hired, I think, maybe 10 months ago or 9 months. March. And she's made a huge difference. I mean, she's really allowed the Recreation Committee to take on things that they hadn't before. She's come up with a bunch of new activities. I think there's a lot more to do, especially for seniors as well as young people, and for family members. There could be classes. Town Hall is very big, and there's a lot that could go on in it. I would say also that the Northeast Community Center offered to have a station, as it were, in Town Hall. And Northeast Community Center, as you know, provides most of the social services for this whole region, and they were willing to do that. They are willing to do after-school activities for Weebatuck kids. They're willing to help seniors with their taxes. So there's a lot that can happen. I think we just need to push a little bit to find out what people want and come up with things that people would want. In terms of the families staying, though, I think the bigger issue again is housing and doing something to hold the prices on housing and create more of it, and to hold our taxes at a rate that they can afford.
All right, the microphone goes to Paul. Paul, if you win, how will you be there for volunteer facilities, for example, fire company, library,
How will I what?
church? How will you be there for volunteer facilities? Example, fire company, library, church, ICC. I hope somebody here knows what that means.
So what do you mean, how will I be there? I mean, how will I support them? Or
But let's assume that that's what the person asking the question means. You're interpreting. And Saint Ant, it's an abbreviation. Saint Anthony?
The ICC is Immaculate Conception.
immaculate.
All right. So how are you going to support the people and the volunteers in those facilities?
It's so these volunteer organizations, they do most of their fundraising on their own, and I would just continue to cheerlead them in that aspect. Town taxpayer money does not go to these volunteer facilities. We do not pay for them. They go out and they fundraise and they work very, very hard to keep those items going within this community. How could a town board help them? create more economic opportunity so that there's more local residents working that can volunteer for those organizations and improve those organizations. That's what this town needs. We need more volunteers. I know almost every volunteer in this town, and there's definitely some that I don't know, but I know a lot of them. And we all volunteer at 2 or 3 different organizations. We need more help. And the only way we're going to get more help is if this town board can find a way to increase the economic opportunity within this community. If they can find a way to work better with these new organizations that have come and established themselves in our town, such as Troutbeck or Silo or Wasaic Project. The past 10 years, 15 years since Wasaic Project has come, it seems that this town has had a very tenuous relationship with them, and then it transferred over to Silo, and then it happened to Troutbeck. We can do better than that. They've come to this town because they love it just as much as we do. We need to do a much better job at working with them.
I'm not really sure how to answer that question because I'm not sure I totally understand it. But one of the things that I think that we need to do is, growth is fine, but when thinking about all this planning for all this extra housing, and regardless of whether it's high-end housing or affordable housing, we need to make sure that we keep in mind those people that are volunteering, like the fire department. The population is increasing and the volunteers are decreasing, and a lot of the people that are coming into town are not necessarily the type of people that are going to volunteer for the fire company. How you solve that problem, I'm not exactly sure, other than to support activities that those groups of people put on to help fund them. But as far as the actual body work is concerned, I do volunteer work, but I can't be a fire person, or I can't, I don't know what the answer is to that. I really don't, and I would be lying if I said I did. I think that people need to reach out, though. I know that you can't, one of the things I have found out in volunteering is that you can't put something in the paper and say we need volunteers. You need to reach out to people like you do for everything else. You need to go and you need to ask people to volunteer. It's a lot harder to say no when somebody is standing right there in front of you and asking you than it is to than to just to put an ad someplace. So I think that's important. I think we have to reach out to people, and different organizations have to reach out to people and ask. And again, that goes back to communication.
Vicki?
I work for a nonprofit organization. I just got a call today that I happened to intercept kind of accidentally, but they were, Duchess Outreach was asking for space at Carey Institute. They knew we had facilities. Could we host a convening of food pantries to help solve food insecurity? Okay, a big problem in the area. Getting people together to collaborate and say, you have that resource, you have green beans, you have an excess of whatever, how can we make this all work together? The town hall could serve, if the right leadership was in place. I think the town could be a much friendlier place for convening of organizations that have a specific need. We have resources that don't necessarily mean that we don't have to fund them directly, but we have resources. We have a videographer here tonight getting the information out, who has skills and can edit and can get the information out for other nonprofits at no extra charge for us. They can come to the town hall, they can announce their activities, we can have a more vibrant communication. Again, is one of the things that I think all of us find difficult. There's all these different ways, but the town has a unique position of being right in the dead center, and they can get more of that information out if we are more aggressive at making us be more of a center of communication and activity and sharing our resources, sharing our office space, sharing our communication skills, photocopying flyers if that's what they need to get their event publicized and get our kiosks out there and make sure our the recreation department got a laminator. Biggest problem for me, laminating the flyer so that I could put it on the kiosk, and in the rain and the snow, it would still be out there.
All right. We are within the last window, and I'm going to give everybody 3 minutes for their closing remarks. However, we didn't get to all the questions. So I'm going to read the last 4 questions here that are a little bit different. And if you want to incorporate your last 3 minutes, something that relates to these questions, feel free to do so. But if you have prepared remarks that you want to use, or if you want to sum up so here goes, all right? One question asked, the planning board makes many decisions that affect the town's makeup, yet their deliberations are not always transparent. What can you do about that? Another question was, why do you want to be town supervisor? And on the blue card, why do you want the job of being a council person? And there's a question here, how much time will you allocate to running the town each week and managing the staff and the facilities, which is kind of a supervisor question, but it can also be a town board member question in terms of how much time do you have available to invest in the position. And starting with your 3-minute closing remarks, Leo goes first.
Okay. Let's see. I'll start with the time allocation. Again, I'm retired. I've been spending a great deal of time in the 2 years I've been on the town board. I am working, it isn't quite a full-time job, but it's certainly at least a half-time job, even as a town board member. I would assume that I will work very much the schedule that Victoria has at this point. So that's one thing. Why I want the job, because I really want there to be progress in Amenia that has not happened for decades, and I think I have ways to do that, or I have skills that could be used to do that. In terms of the planning board and transparency, at least the planning board meetings should certainly be televised, but people also have to attend them. The planning board makes very big decisions. They're intentionally separate from the town board so that their decisions aren't based on politics, but that's not a guarantee. And I think unless people speak out about these various projects, they're really not very accountable, and also there are a number of people who've been on there for a long time and are very much behind any development that happens, regardless of what it is. I guess I would say that one of the things I want to do is foster a sense of community in town. One issue is kind of respecting volunteers. We've had remarkable chairs of committees and boards in the last few years, and I don't think they've been paid attention to. I don't think they've been treated well at town board hearings, and I think that we just can't tell volunteers or citizens to just sit down and be quiet at public hearing, which I've seen too many times. I agree that the facilities at Town Hall could be better used. There's an incredible amount of space there. The gym and the auditorium are barely ever used. The Rec Commission hopefully can fill in some of that need with maybe a winter time. Okay, basketball in November, but also maybe a winter film series or a winter music series. And there are classrooms that can be used for classrooms for youth and seniors. I also think we have to make a big effort to welcome new neighbors, and I don't think that's something that we've consciously done. There are actually a lot of young families that have moved here, and the thing that I think is most significant there is that the equation has changed with COVID. Because so many people are able to work remotely, people are able to live up here and raise families who wouldn't have before, because commuting 5 days a week into Manhattan or White Plains or wherever is too much, and now people can live here and raise families.
Shiva, you gave him 3 minutes? Ah, wonderful. Thank you. Victoria.
I want to be supervisor because I want to finish the highway garage project. I worked very hard to move it along. My experience, hard work, and determination while building relationships with state agencies have proven that complicated projects can be completed by me. It seems that many of our projects take a long time to complete. That is because there is a process to follow, which often includes state agencies that have their own processes to follow. It takes patience and perseverance to work through all of the requirements. Getting the state land for the highway garage took almost 2 years by the time OPWDD, OGS, and DEC got through their processes. It is important to follow all the steps and get it right the first time, and sometimes that takes a while. My plan is to work with local business owners to improve the business district, which is ongoing, with setting up an appointment with DOT to have the state address potholes and other issues. In addition, I'll be applying for grants to increase walkability in Wassaic and Amenia. There is much to be done to improve the business district and spur economic development, and I will work diligently to make it happen. As far as the planning board, it's important that we communicate when the meetings are and exactly how important they are. And I believe the more important issues like Keene Stud, those particular meetings should be televised, because that directly affects our town in a big way. I'm also available to you by phone, text, and email, so we can work together for a better future together and get the projects completed to make the town of Amenia a destination. I also want to work with recreation and to work on the projects that he wants to get through. I know going for grants is particularly difficult, but we can work on that and work with the Recreation Commission to set up a budget, get engineering done, and do whatever the town needs to do to make these projects happen. And I'm more than willing, able. I am totally retired. I do not have another job. I spend a lot of time at the town hall, depending what I have to do, whether it's sign checks, have meetings, and take care of other various problems and issues. But the town hall, we're using it as a community center for recreation and blood drives and a lot of other things.
Thank you. Please pass the microphone to Rosanna.
I'm going to address the planning board first. As you can probably tell, I have a little issue with that. I do email people when the meetings are and send them the agendas, and I will happily take anybody's email and do the same for you so that people can come. People need to go. They need to know that they're being watched. They need to be televised, and you know, there's nothing else I can say about that. I mean, it's important that we all be aware aware of what's going on. I think the community needs to provide more services in the town hall, like after-school programs, which it was mentioned with at a Northeast Community Center. There's a lot of things offered in Millerton that we don't offer here. I think that we have to make sure that we're reaching out to our Hispanic neighbors that are moving into town. I mean, making sure that the communication gets to them as well. As far as all the other, all I can tell you is this is my first time doing this. I have a vested interest in the town. I care about the town and the people, and I'm not going to make any great promises up here. I'm not going to ensure anything except that I will do the very best that I can. I will work very hard to do whatever needs to be done. I will listen to you. I will communicate openly and honestly, and that's all I can do. And why I'm doing this is because I really want to be part of the direction that this community is taking, and I want to see us go back to being a real community where people are looking out for each other, that we're there for each other.
Vicki?
I think I want to remain your town councilwoman so that I can see through. I hear a refraining theme here. There's unfinished business in Amenia, and it does take a long time to prime the pump, and I think we're at the point where we are at the primed position to see some things actually happen that we have had long awaited. We got the rail trail extension, and that was exciting. We spent 12 some years trying to get that, even with a big federal grant. It's hard work. It needs people who put their shoulder to the plow and don't give up. And I have been I worked with the Climate Smart Task community to get an EV charging station, which I want to go ahead and implement. We haven't yet gotten the absolute go-ahead, but it would be 2 years of free charging for residents who make the leap and buy an electric vehicle. And we had thought we would put it at the rail trail parking lot, but there are some other options as well. But we had fun on believe it or not, fun on Saturday mornings working on this grant. It took us a week of solid work, but you know what? I'm a fundraiser, and I don't do grants normally. I work with personal donors primarily. So this is a fun little exercise for me to do something in my field to keep my little sword sharpened in that area. So I love doing the EV charging station, even though it was hard as heck to do. But we got it done. We got money for the comprehensive plan update. I realized as citizens we were having trouble moving the thing forward, so we got a $12,000 grant from the Greenway. Instead of being at a meeting, we plugged in and we did a grant online right then and there primarily. And that, I want to see that move forward. We got Pace University to agree to come and help us. Their Pace Land Use Law Center is the top in the nation in environmental law, and they'll come and help us put in the parts that we are struggling, that address the climate resiliency in our community and natural resource protection, the missing parts of the solar laws that may need tweaking, so that we get, state-of-the-art stuff. That's what I like to do, and that's why I like to continue on, is to be able to find that little seed funding that makes us just that much edge, more competitive, more capable, and a greener, more attractive, fantastic place. I also believe in the young people, and have year after year, when I moved here, I recognized that this town was the only town that had a free theater arts program, so I'm dedicated to keeping that going. There will be a program here December 17th, right here in this auditorium with Arm of the Sea Theater, and we got it done mostly with grants. So that's what I like to continue doing.
May I have a round of applause for these mighty volunteers? Oh, you didn't get your 3 minutes? Did I miss you out?
I would like to have my closing comments.
Oh, please. I am so
I
sorry.
mean, I
Go.
tried to be
Go.
polite here.
Absolutely.
Can I have my closing comments?
You may.
All right, so about 2 hours ago, or 3 hours ago, I sat down for the first time in my 50 years in my life and created a opening statement and a closing statement. And I realized that's just not really me. I've always spoke off the cuff. I got into the politic aspect of this town 3 years ago because my daughters told me that they didn't see any future in this town. And that really bothered me. And then I kept hearing everybody beat on all these new people that have come into this town, that love this town and what I've seen as much as we have. And it just really bothered me that all of this animosity was going on and that there was no progress. I keep hearing that people are creating progress, but then I hear about $1 million problem for the drinking water because the people that have been there for 20 years never addressed it. They never raised their rates. They kept their rates static to make them happy. They kept their rates static. And now here we are 20 years later with a water system that's got $1 million problem and we don't have the money to fix it. That to me is poor planning. I don't understand that. You got to plan for your future. And currently, this town is not doing that. We're kind of stuck where we were 30 years ago. The only thing that's changed in this town is we don't have Jamesway. We now have Tractor Supply from when I lived here in 1987. That's really pretty much, that's all that's changed. And now we have Silo. So I'm all about growth, right? I'm all about new ideas. I got on a rec commission. I brought Weebatuck Student Leadership Challenge idea to the board. I brought the music series to the board. I pushed the town board really hard to create the proper bylaws for a recreation commission. I put a lot of effort in this past year, and it wasn't that hard. I created a lot of change in a 1 year's time, so it's possible. But currently, what I'm seeing, it's not happening. Every time I appeared before the town board, I was the punching bag. I got beat on a lot by the town board, by all of them, and that's okay because I can deal with it. Ms. Perotti here has shown me over this past year that she's willing to listen to reason and change things, and that's a good sign of somebody who could be a good leader, that can listen to somebody that has a completely different idea to them, and they can make that change. And that's what I'm all about. Is I can work with anybody, but I'm all about being able to have a conversation with somebody, and each of us change our ideas a little bit and move forward, compromise. And that's pretty much all I got. Thank you. Have a good night.
Now the applause. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Are you available to stay, and can people come up to you? Yeah? All right. So our guests will be down on the floor, and if you want to come and chat with them, please feel free to do so.